Well, inflation rates across the country are well over 8% as of the end of March. That means on everything from gas to the grocery store, your dollars just don't go as far as they used to. I caught up with one Republican voter and business owner who says inflation is what he will be thinking about when he heads to the ballot box. This is all part of our series to let you have your say before Election Day.
Was this an omelet with just cheese?
Luke Black owns the Marketplace restaurant in Pinehurst. He says deciding what to put on his menu these days is often decided by what he can afford.
We just brought corned beef back on the menu, but we took it off for 6 or 8 months because it was like almost $9 a pound.
It's just Black and 7 employees that keep this Moore County institution up and running. He says after a tough 2-year struggle through the pandemic, this new challenge of increased costs to keep his business running is frustrating.
Eggs have doubled, meat's up about 12%, cream cheese in general is up 15%, so it's about 16% average increase in across the board.
Like many business owners today, Black can rattle off a list of numbers that shows how his overhead is rising rapidly.
All sandwiches last year, they were 10 and 12, now they're 12 and 15.
But he says he also is seeing other numbers go down in a bad way.
If you order 10 cases of something, sometimes 3 might come. It's 30% of the stuff that you order might come, if it comes. There's weeks where we can't get, we had to increase, we charge $1 to get chips on the side now because it cost me 60 cents.
The daily grind of keeping the restaurant running never slows down, no matter what the cost concerns may be. I wasn't allowed to film as they made their special mustard sauce. Don't want that recipe getting out.
Right now, Anna's over there making our signature Marketplace mustard.
For over 40 years, the Marketplace has been bringing in customers with its comfort food. But Black says it's definitely harder to serve them today.
You can only outwork inflation so much.
Black is a tried and true Republican voter, something he doesn't mind letting his customers know.
We're here with this inflation and this, oh man, I'm on camera, so I shouldn't say what I want to say, but the idiot in the White House has got us. I mean, it's not just him, it's everybody. But
he says as the 2022 campaign season kicks off with the primary elections, he's looking for candidates that understand the impact inflation is having on him and folks in his community.
I've never seen a supply chain like this. The prices are one thing, but prices on top of supply chain, when you can't get something and then when you do get it and it costs double, that's the frustrating part.
And tough times or not, Black says for him, the restaurant business will always be in his blood.
I would miss my customers if I wasn't doing this, so I get inflation down so we can keep doing this.
Black says last year his costs were about $42,000 more than the year before, and he anticipates that number being even higher this year. Continue to follow our series of Your Say Before Election Day here on Spectrum News 1 with both Republican and Democratic voter issues, or check out the stories online at spectrumlocalnews.com. Medicaid provides health insurance for tens of millions of low-income adults and children throughout the United States. Here in North Carolina, over 200,000 people fall into what is known as the Medicaid gap, where they make too much money for Medicaid, but not enough for an Affordable Care Act subsidy. I caught up with one Democratic voter who falls in this gap and says it is forcing her to make some tough decisions about her health. This is all part of our series to let you have your say before Election Day.
My chest is tight.
In these nearly real-life scenarios, these nursing students at Fayetteville Tech are learning how to care for you when you get sick or are having an emergency.
I can't breathe.
Which makes it ironic that for at least one of these future healthcare workers, they can't afford to get health insurance.
It feels like I'm playing Russian roulette with my health conditions. So.
Ray falls in what many call the Medicaid gap. She's 26 years old, which means she can no longer be on her parents' health insurance.
Okay, so I guess I can discontinue it now.
Yeah. She's also a full-time student.
There we go.
and working when she can on the weekends and maybe a few hours during the week, only able to bring in a couple $100 every 2 weeks.
And I'm like, well, I'm in school full time. Well, yeah, for you to qualify, because I don't have any kids, so they go off for dependents and all of that. And they're just still like, well, we need you to work at least 20 hours. So I just explained my schedule, how am I fitting these 20 hours into my week. So it's definitely frustrating, definitely.
Ray's efforts are clearly going towards finishing up her nursing degree. But for her, that means she's having to ignore some of her health issues until she can afford to pay for them.
Now, with my vision, basically I have to get eye drops, and the eye drops as well is a couple of $100. So if I had the eye drops, I could get the inflammation. It helps with my inflammation that's in my eye, so it would reduce that. And I'm also supposed to go back into surgery, but right now I can't afford to go back into surgery to get that corrected. So
Ray is a Democratic voter. She says when she heads to the ballot box, she believes these issues of health care coverage and costs should be top issues for candidates.
I would want to hear someone say, I'm expanded Medicaid. That's one. Also with medication costs, I feel like there needs to be a cap on that. It's so many people out here, so many Kayla's running around out here with these health conditions, and and they might be working towards the goal just like I am.
She says she feels like there needs to be consideration for people like her who are trying to raise themselves up, but also have critical needs that need to be taken care of.
It gets overwhelming and frustrating, but then again, I remember why I'm doing this, why I'm going through this journey.
Ray has 1 semester of nursing school left, and she says she's hopeful by this time next year she will have a full-time nursing job with medical benefits included. Continue to follow our series of Your Say Before Election Day here on Spectrum News 1 with both Republican and Democratic voter issues, or check out the stories online at spectrumlocalnews.com. Well, there have been many critics of how votes are cast and how votes are counted for years now. Here in North Carolina, the voters amended our Constitution years ago to say we would require voter ID as an effort to increase election security. But to this day, it is still not in use. I caught up with one Republican voter who says election integrity is amongst his top concerns this election season. And this is all part of our series to let you have your say before Election Day.
Part of what we cared so much about was securing these Iraqi ballots.
Harold Eustache served as an infantryman in the 141st Airborne Division. He says one of the parts of his mission in Iraq he remembers most vividly is the work that his team did to help with one of the country's first elections.
We thought a lot about how to make sure that this election was secure, how to make sure those ballots were secure, and we knew that we would be potentially, a target.
That passion for election security is something that Eustache still carries with him today.
We literally flew tens of thousands of ballots across a valley, and how important we took that duty even for the Iraqi people to be able to vote in their own election, and how much excitement that brought them. All right, so.
Now, a criminal law attorney in Winston-Salem,
Get a misdemeanor instead of a felony.
He says confidence in safe and fair elections is paramount for people across the state and country.
Here in North Carolina, the issue is partly with our General Assembly essentially being usurped on its authority to write election law, to draw the districts that they are authorized to draw. And I think we saw that in 2020 with the State Board of Elections and some of the laws being changed in the fourth quarter, and that the General Assembly wasn't able to be heard on that. And that's really the people's voice in North Carolina.
In 2018, North Carolina voters approved an amendment to our state constitution that would require photo identification when you go to cast your ballot. However, due to ongoing court cases, the enacting legislation has never become law, and 4 years later, photo ID is still not needed. Eustache says when it comes to election integrity, he believes that this is an important piece.
There's this argument by the Democratic Party that voter ID is somehow going to suppress minority vote, and it's a myth. And frankly, it's more than a myth, it's a lie.
He says as a black man himself, he finds offensive the argument against voter ID that minority voters wouldn't be able to get the ID, or at least a lower number of them would.
Why does someone think that me or anyone in my family or anyone in my community wouldn't be able to get an ID? I mean, even if we look at the finer points of the voter ID law that was enacted, the IDs are free. There was money in that legislation allocated to bring mobile DMVs to voters in rural and urban areas. So there would be no real issue with getting an ID.
Eustache is a Republican voter. He says when he heads to the polls, he will be looking for a candidate that speaks out about election integrity.
I would want a candidate that says, that our elections are sacred. Our elections are one of the most important things that we do in this country. And frankly, they're unique.
For Eustache, he says it all goes back to that feeling and sense of honor that he felt while helping the Iraqi people secure their elections.
How this is really an awesome, awesome thing that, that every human being in the course of human history hasn't been able to do, hasn't been able to choose their leaders in a free way. And so it's something so important, so I value it quite a bit.
Eustache says he is hopeful there is a resolution to the issue of requiring voter ID sooner rather than later. Continue to follow our series of Your Say Before Election Day here on Spectrum News 1 with both Republican and Democratic voter issues, or check out the stories online at spectrumlocalnews.com. Well, climate change is a hot-button issue for many voters. It's something that could affect many aspects of our lives, from how our infrastructure is built to how our food is grown. I caught up with one Democratic voter and restaurant owner who says this is one of his top concerns this election season and in his daily life and business. This is all part of our series to let you have your say before Election Day. The kitchen is busy as Trophy Brewing and Pizza opens for the day. The staff quick to get the food out to the customers. Customers who might be seeing some changes in their favorite neighborhood watering hole.
We're lucky to be in a business where our customers really support us for doing that. And we've also reduced our utility bills at the same time, so it's been a big win.
Trophy Brewing and Pizza opened in the capital city in 2013. A few years ago, they knew it was time for a few renovations. But at the same time, it was time to think about going green.
We have a green roof up here. You can see the grass coming over the roof line. It's 1,500 square feet, and the goal is for the rainwater to soak in there and not run into the rivers and streams and flood people downstream.
Also on the roof, solar panels were added. Meeker says that they had an upfront cost, but quickly paid for themselves.
We spent $60,000 on our solar panels. We got a tax credit for about a third of that, and then we also got a Duke Energy rebate. So pretty quickly we had covered about 40% of our costs already, gotten it back.
But with the additions, there were also subtractions.
So we have no car parking spots on our lot.
Trophy decided to truly mark itself as a neighborhood joint by removing all of its designated parking spots. Instead, they encourage people to walk or ride a bike or scooter.
I mean, it's a little more expensive than you would think. These racks are like securely bolted into the sidewalk, but it's nothing like a car parking spot would cost, and it doesn't take up nearly as much room.
Meeker is a Democratic voter. He says when he heads to the ballot box, this issue of climate change will be one of the top, if not the top, issue for him.
Once you get to a certain age, you start to think about what you're leaving your kids. And if things continue the way they are, we're putting our kids in a really bad spot. Hey, y'all.
Meeker says his customers say they appreciate his initiative on environmental issues. And he says it will take the younger generation to keep pushing this issue for real change to happen.
I love that pressure that the younger generation is putting on us to do something about it, and it's really healthy pressure, and we need to act.
Meeker says some of the environmental changes he has made are expensive, but he says for him, cost or not, it's the right thing to do. You can watch our entire series of Your Say Before Election Day online at SpectrumLocalNews.com.